Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Workaway Offices podcast. Today, I had the unique pleasure of interviewing Dr. Daniel Shapiro, a leader in artificial intelligence consulting and the chief technical officer of Lemay.ai. Daniel and his team develop AI solutions for companies worldwide. One of the things that I thought was very unique and I think very helpful in today's podcast with Daniel was that he answered the question about what is AI going to do to change our world, change the way we look at things, change jobs? And I think he had a very interesting perspective that everyone would really appreciate listening and hearing. So please stay tuned. And in a moment, I'll be welcoming Daniel to the podcast. Daniel, it's so nice to have you here at the Workaway Offices podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Vince. It's always nice to be here.
Thank you. Daniel, I've known you for a long time. You were one of our first members at Workaway Offices, I think about 6, 7 or so years ago. I've known you for a while. I've known Matthew, your colleague, for a while as well. Our audience doesn't know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Vince. So our company does AI solutions for corporate. And so we'll help companies that are doing something do it better with AI. We've been at this for a long time, so 8 years. And yeah, 6 here at Workaway Office, very happy members, so that's good. And yeah, we started as like a team of 2 people doing AI consulting back in 2016. And yeah, now we're at 30 people. So wow. It's grown a bit.
Wow,
yeah.
That's fantastic. And I know that your customers are around the world. I know that you are a leader in AI. What have been some of the industries or areas that you've been focusing your work with artificial intelligence in?
So we've got really a small number of areas that we're focused on. Things where there's like already some existing technology. So think aerospace and defense, agriculture and industrials. Like the advantage of these areas from the consultant's perspective is that they're highly technical. They're not easy to implement solutions in regardless of AI or not AI. And so these are businesses that really do need the extra help. If you have a generic software solution and you want to add AI, it's a lot easier to find people who can work in that environment than if there's some security clearance required or ISO certification required. And so we tend to do that like more advanced work. And we tend to get called when the customer has some development team that's trying to do something and they're struggling and they go like, oh, we should bring in a consulting team to help out.
Is there a recent example that you can point to that you've been involved with?
Yeah, so we did a cool project for McCain. They make the French fries.
Yes, good French fries too.
Yeah. So, and this is in the public domain. It's not under NDA. So this was a project that was also supported by the government of Canada. And we helped to improve the efficiency of their fryers. They make French fries. And you wouldn't think AI when you think potatoes. But as it turns out, if you want to know if the system is efficient, you need to have a model of what the expected efficiency is. And that turns out then you need AI to make a prediction based on all these sensors and systems. It's a very, very big machine. So like think like building size machine, not little, and really big industrial fryer type thing. And this is the same thing for, let's say, a desalination plant where you want to know, like, is my efficiency what I would expect it to be? And that's when you realize like, oh, there's some AI component here. Let's go get some help.
Interesting. And I know in the past as well that you did a lot of work in the audit space, and I'm sure you're still doing that work as well. And that's an industry that I'm quite familiar with, being that I used to be in that space. And I got to think that there's got to be a huge amount of room and opportunity for AI and the work that you're doing in that space. So is there anything, again, not having you encroach on any NDAs, but is there anything, examples there that you could provide as well?
Yeah, so we do work with customers in the States and Europe, and we've seen in the like due diligence banking sector, there's a lot of inefficiency where for risk management, for counterparty due diligence, a lot of it is like gumshoe, like people look through documents, talk to people, and there's a lot of opportunity for efficiency there that wasn't possible 10 years ago that is possible now.
Mm.
And so those requirements haven't really changed much. You still want to know, like, is this person who wants to be my customer bad in the news or something? That's like a know your customer kind of requirement.
Mm.
And all these requirements haven't changed, but the technology to accomplish them has improved.
Mm.
So reputation monitoring, is someone saying bad about my business? There are a lot of these requirements that there were solutions, and the solutions are now getting better. And then the cost per report, let's say you want to hire an executive and you want to chase down what bad stuff is there out there. Should I hire them? Maybe I shouldn't. So that's the kind of thing where they're evergreen requirements, but the tools have very quickly evolved that it used to be that report would be $20,000 and maybe you can get it done for $2,000. So that's a huge change in the costs. And maybe you go, why am I doing this just at the executive level? Let's do all the senior managers, right? Because it's cheaper. So there's also competitive advantages. So like brand new requirements, in addition to all these things that people are doing now that they could do more efficiently, you end up with a situation where you could, let's say, identify a company to purchase if you're in like the buying companies business that previously you just couldn't gather the intelligence. You weren't able to gather and act quickly enough that now you can. Some of that has to do with just the digitization of the world, and some of it has to do with the AI technology that takes advantage of that new data to act.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. And, it seems like everywhere you go today, it seems like everyone's talking about artificial intelligence, AI, and there's so many different AI tools that are coming out. It seems like almost by the day. What are some of the challenges that you see in the world or consumers or people accepting more AI? Do you see any challenges with people being able to just get more involved with all the AI tools?
So I like to take a very laid back approach to this and think about AI like software. There were people with pencils that were filling in spreadsheets that were deleted by Excel. It was a big disaster, but it all worked out. Like the economy actually grew. Those same people learned how to use Excel. And so there is a lot of fear that, like software did a lot of creative destruction in the Greenspan speak, there is also a lot of creative destruction in AI not in the places we expected. Artists, journalists, these were not jobs that people were thinking were at risk from AI, that in the past 5 years, they're like, oh, wait, actually, that's where the problems are. And even software development, people are worried, like, is this going to take my software development job away? Really, I don't buy into the fear either from the working class or from the like company ownership class. Really what's happening is we're continuing this long evolution of computing technology getting better and better. So for a long time, we were used to Moore's law, that it was the hardware getting better and better. And now we're in a situation where maybe the software is getting better and better. But all the key problems we have in our society, healing people who are sick, we need to develop medicines to do stuff like cure cancer that we have not done. We have a lot of work to do. And having more capacity to solve problems with AI and other technology is great. There's no downside there. So I think addressing people's concerns is best done by getting people to know the technology. And that happened in software, it just took a while. So initially we had, all these bad ideas about what is software, and we had the dot-com bubble. And then people realized like, oh, you have to make money with software. Okay, now I get it. And so AI is going to be the same thing. It's this evolution, not a revolution, where things get suddenly a lot better and more efficient. And there's some focus, at least on the micro side, like on the $100 billion company, got to make money, right?
That is a good concept, absolutely. And you know what? No, it's very interesting the way you put that, Daniel. And you're right. It's an evolution, isn't it? And there's been, if we look back on time, how many evolutions have we gone through? So very, very well said. I have always been one of your biggest fans and Matthew's biggest fans. I think what you guys do is absolutely incredible. You're two very, very smart individuals. How can businesses take advantage of your services, and what kind of value can you offer to those businesses?
So we tend to help businesses that are already kind of organized. We have a small startup practice that's not the focus of our business. What we've been doing is helping corporates in our area of AI. So it's very common that we'll work with a front end development team and maybe a back end development team, and then we'll do the AI part. So the way that we're helping businesses is in the AI component of their larger project, we'll come in and do some discovery and help figure out what is the right thing to do, what's possible, and then scope a project and implement it. It does happen that we'll bid on projects that are posted, but that's not the common pattern. The much more common pattern is we're going in to help out with an open mindset to solve problems and identify opportunities for projects that then we can participate in.
Interesting.
It's difficult for the client to know what's the right project if they're not an expert in AI. So it's not a reasonable expectation they would know. So yeah, very often we're dealing with customers that have like an internal IT department, and we deal with them on how we're going to integrate. And so yeah, it's not often that we get to start with a blank piece of paper, but we can start with an open mindset. And typically, when someone shows up as a customer, they do have some problem. So in the oil sector, there's like a lot of pressure on how can you do the same thing but with fewer resources. There's like a common pressure among organizations that are competing with each other. So in aerospace and defense, you see a lot of this like requirements come out from the end customer, who's some military. And then it's kind of the problem of industry to figure out how to do it, and they're competing all with each other. And so there's a common set of requirements and goals, but the implementation details are kind of left up to the engineers.
Interesting.
And that's where we show up and get to, have fun and do interesting.
And so you work with the customers to understand the problem. And the more that you can understand about the problem, obviously you're able to offer a solution to those customers, and in the form of an AI solution or a consulting solution. So
So what's interesting is if you look at the headcount of our company, who works there, as an employer, I would love for it to be a bunch of high school students who are low paid, but in fact, it's a bunch of PhDs that are high paid, high complexity. The reason being, we're dealing with problems out there on the edge where the requirements have been created or the problems are being exposed that maybe have a solution, and they're hard. So it's kind of cool because we get to work on the coolest stuff, but also it's kind of high risk, high reward all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Never a dull moment then.
Never a dull moment. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And our podcast audience is made up of entrepreneurs, startups, freelancers, business people. If you had to offer some business advice to our audience, what would that business advice be?
Work hard.
Very good advice.
That's really all it takes. Like, you can overcome headwinds of any kind with effort.
Yeah, I agree. I think I can't remember who it was, but it may have been former President Eisenhower that said, "The harder I work, the luckier I get."
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes a lot of sense. So Daniel, when you're not hard at work, and I know you are a hard worker, what do you do to unwind? What's the side of Daniel that we don't see? What do you do to sort of relax?
So I like video games and do not get enough time to play them. So I'm getting up there in my age already. I'm not super
and you have a young family.
Yeah, I got 4 kids. So I would say for video games, the kind of esports scene of StarCraft 2, which is a relatively old game, but a good strategy game, gives you kind of a balance of like resource development and competition. And it's basically like modern chess. If you think about it, chess is sort of static. With StarCraft, you get a little bit more, but that game is kind of aging out. And there's an esports scene associated with it. So if I can't play the video game, I can watch people play the video game.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's an entertainment component to that. And more generally, I bustle around the 4 kids. They've got all sorts of enrichment activities. Yeah, so 4 kids in private school is not so cheap. But yeah, they're of the right ages from 5 to 13, that they're all in the same school at the same time, which is kind of cool. And they do singing and all these different activities.
Kids keep you busy.
They do.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm fortunate that my kids are adults now, but I've been there, done that. So very familiar with all the work involved. Lastly, Daniel, as I said earlier, we've been very fortunate at Workaway offices to have you and Matthew and your colleagues as members for a long time. What attracted you to Workaway offices, and what's keeping you here?
So there are a few aspects to think about here. The first one is we've not just stuck around, we stuck around through the move to different buildings. So like we definitely are sticking around.
Yes.
This was not like a casual, like, why make a change? I think that there's some amount of recognition of people that think the same way tend to go to the same places. And this environment, I think, is a good place with like a startup mentality. And you want to kind of be adjacent to that wherever possible. In a generic office building, it's typical Canada. People don't know their neighbors. They don't talk to each other. There's isn't as much of a sense of camaraderie in the generic real estate market as there is in a membership-based environment. And also, as someone who tends to arrive early and stay late, I see other people arrive early and stay late, and that feels good. It feels like you've got like a common purpose, working in very different fields in law and other areas, but still a kind of like coffee-driven, work environment. I think the flexibility is also very favorable, the ability to scale up and down. So we have some on-premise workers, but mostly remote environment across Canada as the employee base. And it's good to have that kind of flexibility. There are other offices, and we can go to those offices. So that it's a good fit for us for like the nature of the organization that we have.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Daniel. I appreciate your kind words. And thank you for being here as well. I really appreciate your time today. I know how busy you are, and really appreciate you spending some time with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get in touch with Daniel Shapiro, we'll leave his contact information below in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I know I have. And if you can, please subscribe to the channel. We'll make sure that you get updated automatically for future podcasts. And always a thumbs up would always be very helpful. So thank you for listening, and see you soon.